Hello. Welcome back to another vlog. New to the channel, my name is Miss Amy and I talk about my journey, vlog about my journey, and I vlog about my son's journey because he's a part of my life. I am a single mom, and I know you can read by the title how it's not always like rainbows and what you expect it to be when you are a part of this big world that has rules and regulations on everything. It can be challenging mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually draining. And the reason why I decided to talk about this subject is because I'm gonna tag my girl down below. Her name is Nagad, and I've been following her for her journey in motherhood and how she had her son, and the things that she talks about, which I can relate to. She's very young. She's a little younger than me, I think, because I'm in my early 30s. I believe she's in her late 20s. We're close in age. And she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to touch on, let me see if this helps, the glare. I'm just trying to get like the glare out my glasses. She talks about how motherhood affects her mentally, and I was like, you know what, I should talk about that because I always show me and my son, and I always show like the good things, us shopping or us preparing food or us in the house, but there is that side of motherhood that she wasn't scared to talk about, that I've always been scared to talk about, especially on television or like, in the public's eye. We always want to show that the good things, but there are bad things. There are things that make us feel like we're not good enough for our children. And those are topics that she spoke about that I was like, why do I feel scared to talk about these things if she so openly talks about it? And if I get emotional, my fault, but I'm gonna talk about some deep things. So whether you guys know it or not, a few months ago, I was married, and in this marriage, I had 2 stepchildren, and being a real mom or like a biological mom is so different. And although I never spoke about it, it did play a mental hardship in my head, in my life, because ultimately I am a good mother. And going from not being a mom to stepmom, then being a mom, a biological mom to my son, had so many roller coasters, so many different shifts, so many different perspectives, so many different opinions, so many different situationships that I had to deal with, that I wasn't ready for, or I didn't prepare myself for, or I didn't think it was that hard. So before my son came into the world, I first was a stepmom, and I never vlogged about it because I wasn't vlogging at that time. I wasn't doing videos. And then when I did start doing videos, I never spoke about it because it was so painful. Now, mind you, these children that I was stepmomming or being stepmom to were older. They weren't toddlers, they weren't babies, they were older, so they were already used to their people. And me coming in as stepmom was new and I would say intimidating in their eyes. And just the way that everything happened was really fast. We all moved in together. A few months after that, I got married to the dad. And then when the family is not with it, it makes things very hard on the kids. And these are things that people do not talk about because they're painful, you know? And who wants to sit there and talk about the bad in a marriage, or step parents and stepchildren? Nobody, right? You think that you marry someone that has kids and it's rainbows and beautiful and flowers, especially when they're still kids, but they're not babies or toddlers. So it makes it different because they're already old enough to have their own opinion and their own thoughts and their own way of feeling about everybody because they're older. Hopefully this video is not long, that I felt like I had to express, because although I'm not in those kids' life anymore, I do think about them and I do miss them. But because they had family members that weren't happy about the marriage I was in with the member of the family, it made the kids have their own opinion about me moving forward and the way they were gonna bond with me, and ultimately made it into nothing today. So stepmom was very hard. It was very painful because while I was stepmom, I was pregnant and I had a lot of hormonal issues. I should say I wasn't the happiest pregnant woman, because I had other issues with the dad and the family and the church, and it was a whole ball of issues all the way around. And then I became mom. At that point, what motherhood really was, I didn't quite understand what it was with stepchildren that were already older, that I didn't really nurture, that I didn't really know, should I say. And I can't say because they didn't come from me or they weren't of my bloodline that I couldn't love them, because I love them regardless, because I married their dad. So I understood what unconditional love was when I had my son. I understood the true meaning of being a mom, not playing mom, but being a mom. I understood that I had to do whatever I can to make sure that that kid had everything they needed without family's judgments or opinions or thoughts. Because regardless, people are going to talk about the way you parent, no matter if you're a good parent or you're a bad parent. There's always going to be a judgment. And if you know in your heart that you're a good parent, then that's all that really matters, you know? So, long story short, I had my son and I wanted to make sure that he had everything that he needed and he didn't have lack, if that was. So where I left off was, the family, if they do not support you being with that person that you married, is going to get in the way of everything, every aspect of your relationship, every aspect of children, if there's children involved. And that is the dark side of marrying someone that the family doesn't really care if that person is happy or not. And basically is there to destroy everything. Remember that actions speak louder than words. So if someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, I'm sorry for everything that I did," and there's no action behind that sorry, then they're not sorry. I'm just being raw and honest with you. If there is no action behind whatever statement they have, especially a sorry, then they're not sorry, okay? And if they don't take the steps to wound it back together, they don't care, okay? And that is just part of what happened to me. The truth is, I didn't know how to be a mom when I was a stepmom. I didn't know anything about mothering. I didn't know anything about motherhood, because going back in time, I didn't have a great mom. I didn't have a fierce mom. I didn't have a mom that would drop everything, even the dreams that she had, to be there for her children, okay? It took me having my son to open my mind and feeling that love in my heart, that unconditional love, to understand the depths of being a mom, a good mom, okay? And the fact that I grew up without really my dad, and I grew up really without my mom because I got taken away from her when I was 11 years old and I got put in the system. I didn't know how to be a stepmom. How could I understand? I just knew that I was married, and I knew that I had to do my best, you know? But it was difficult when people were so negative around you, didn't believe in you, didn't give you an opportunity, didn't give you love, especially while being pregnant. So it was challenging, you know, being a stepmom was really challenging. And then even being a mom to this day, my son is going to be 4 now, right? Before my son came, I was trying my hardest to be a nurse, and that's why this channel had started as nursing, because ultimately the vlog was going to be about nursing and my journey as a nurse, and you know, the steps I took to do that. And I was very excited for the opportunity, and I tried again because of my son, because I wanted him not to know what real lack was, coming from a home of lack. All right, so coming from a place of lack in my life, I said, okay, I'm gonna do different for him. I'm gonna make sure that financially I'm stable and I have everything good for him, everything in order for him. And ultimately it was for all of them, my stepchildren included. But although the family was in the way, I still kind of tried to force that relationship, and then realized you can't force people to be in your life or to be a part of your life if they ultimately don't want to. All right, so what I was saying was, you can't force people to be in your life, right? Like, actions, like I said, speak louder than words. So if their body language and the tone of their voice and the communication is not there when you're calling and when you're trying, and that's just, you're giving out so much energy that it's not being reciprocated, right? So no matter how much it may hurt to let go, ultimately is going to do you better to let go, because you're not giving energy to things or people that really at the end of the day don't care or don't really want to be there. So I pulled back. And to this day, it bothers me. And because I have a big heart, you know, and I want it different for my son. I wanted us to be happy together, all of us, my family included. But the reality of it showed me that it was hurting me more to be there than it is for me not to be there, because I don't have to deal with the negativity. And where I'm going with this is, I want it better for my son because of what happened in my childhood, okay? My childhood wasn't fun. It wasn't a childhood, okay? I grew up extremely fast, and I didn't necessarily want those burdens on my children. And I wanted to make things easier for them. And ultimately, it didn't happen. And I'm still alive, so I still have opportunities to fix things and to make connections and to make my income better. And looking now back at going to nursing school and not being able to complete it and only having 6 months left to complete it was very detrimental to my mental. Because I had people around me that didn't believe in me. I had people around me that didn't care if I made it or not. And they were supposed to. Or were they? Anyhow, it made things really difficult now. So now, going through all the things that I went through that were negative, in terms of not being able to complete nursing school, the dark side of motherhood hits me, right? And all these emotions of not being good enough for my child and not being able to provide and not being able to make it because now I have student loans that I can't afford right now to pay because I didn't finish school, and going through lack myself of things that I need to make sure that he has what he needs so that he doesn't go through lack is mentally exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting. Because the way that the system is set up is, school is pricey. It's way more than anything. Rent is pricey. And they play you with this thing of credit. And if your credit isn't where it's supposed to be, then you can't have a good, live in a great neighborhood or a good housing or good environment, right? And then all that plays a role in your head as a parent, because the last thing you want, if you're a good parent, is to have your kids raised up in a ghetto where people are shooting each other and people are breaking into people's homes because you live next to drug dealers, or you live in a building where they don't care if you have pests or if you have hot water or if the roof is falling. All they care about is if you pay your rent on time or not. And all this plays a role in your mental. It plays a role in your emotions. Because now, how are you going to find the time to go back to school? And you already have loans. So you're going to have more loans, more debt of school. You're not going to be able to see your kid because you have to keep a full-time job to pay that rent, go to school full-time, and then for those 2 years that you sacrificed to go to school, you're not really watching that your kids. You're someone else's. Someone else is feeding them, nurturing them, loving them for 2 years or more, because you don't have family support. You don't have the family that you should have around you, the love from your family, the support, the encouragement. And that plays a mental role, a mental stressor in your life. And that is the dark side of parenting. Damn, I tried. Damn, I tried. And now I have to sacrifice not seeing my son so that I can make my dreams come true, when even before he came, I tried. Before my son came into the world, I tried year after year after year. But because school was so pricey and I always held my own apartment, I had to pay $500 to go to school a month that I couldn't afford because I had no dependents and I wasn't married. But then when I had the opportunity and I was married and I had my kid, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And the last thing I thought that I would worry about was a roof over my son's head, making sure that he had that over his head. And that's what ultimately caused me to fail. And that is the truth. Because I had to worry if we had a roof or not. I had to worry if he was being taken care of correctly when I wasn't around, because his side of the family disliked me so much. And then ultimately, I had to get a divorce and pay my own bills and pay my own rent by myself with my son and somehow make it for him. On top of that, feeling like a failure to him. Because I didn't finish. So it isn't all rainbows. It isn't all happy when you're a parent that has tried time and time and time again to have some type of stable income to live okay, to live comfortably. And the consequences of not having a stable income is living in the ghetto and in a building that is falling apart, that is filled with pests, in a building where people are selling drugs and their homes are getting broken into for either drugs or money. And being scared to bring your kids to school now because people are crazy and they're going into these schools and they're shooting up these children that are innocent, okay? So and I know my problems are minute, you know, and there's moms out there that have it worse. But these are the realities of the time that we're in. The system makes it impossible for you to become anything good because it's so pricey. It makes it impossible for you to live in a decent place if your credit isn't where it needs to be. So that is the dark side of motherhood. And a lot of times I don't feel good because what I could provide is not how I envisioned it, not how I thought it was gonna be, not where I thought I was gonna be. For God's sakes, we're in a studio, okay? In the middle of the ghetto where you hear gunshots all the time, okay? And it's scary. So show us some support and just come for the ride with us. Journey with us.